Imagine a war being fought not just on distant battlefields with tanks and soldiers, but right here on American soil, in the shadows of everyday life. Picture secret agents hiding in plain sight, walking the same streets as ordinary Americans, sitting in the same cafes, riding the same trains, all while sending coded messages across the ocean to Adolf Hitler's Germany. This is not the plot of a spy movie. This is real history, a hidden chapter of World War II that most people never learned in school. While American soldiers fought bravely overseas, another battle raged silently at home, a deadly game of secrets and lies where one wrong move could cost thousands of lives. German spies infiltrated American factories, military bases, and government offices, stealing secrets that could have changed the outcome of the entire war. The FBI hunted them relentlessly, racing against time to stop plans that threatened the very survival of the nation. This is the untold story of German espionage operations in America during World War II, a tale of betrayal, courage, cunning, and the invisible war that nearly destroyed America from within. Long before the first shots of World War II echoed across Europe, Germany was already building its secret army in America. The story truly begins in the years between the two world wars, when the wounds of the first conflict were still fresh, and few people imagined another catastrophic war could happen. During the 1920s and early 1930s, thousands of German immigrants arrived in America seeking opportunity and a better life, just like millions of others before them. Most were honest, hard-working people who wanted nothing more than to become good Americans. But hidden among these innocent families were carefully selected agents of German intelligence, men and women trained in the art of deception and espionage. They came with false backgrounds, fake documents, and mission orders memorized so well that no written evidence existed. These early agents did not immediately begin stealing military secrets. Instead, they built normal lives, opened businesses, joined community organizations, and became trusted members of their neighborhoods. They married, had children, and appeared completely American on the surface, while maintaining secret loyalties to the fatherland. This patient approach showed the long-term thinking of German intelligence services, who understood that the most valuable spies are those who blend in so perfectly that no one ever suspects them. The German intelligence community itself was a complex web of competing agencies, each with its own agenda and methods. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, operated under Admiral Wilhelm Canaris and focused primarily on gathering military information about potential enemies. Meanwhile, the Securinstinst, or SD, served as the intelligence arm of the Nazi SS and concerned itself with political intelligence and counterintelligence. These two organizations often competed with each other, sometimes working at cross purposes, creating confusion and inefficiency in German espionage efforts. Yet despite this internal rivalry, both agencies recognized America as a crucial target for intelligence gathering. They knew that if war came, America's industrial might and military potential could tip the balance against Germany. Therefore, establishing a strong espionage network in America became a top priority years before Hitler invaded Poland. German intelligence officers carefully recruited agents from various backgrounds, including German Americans who still felt emotional ties to their ancestral homeland, opportunists motivated by money, and true believers in Nazi ideology who wanted to help Germany achieve what they saw as its rightful place in the world. As the 1930s progressed and Adolf Hitler consolidated his power in Germany, the pace of espionage activities in America increased dramatically. The German-American Bund became a visible organization that promoted Nazi ideology among German Americans, holding rallies, publishing newspapers, and creating summer camps where children learned German language and culture alongside Nazi propaganda. While the Bund itself was not directly an espionage organization, it served as a recruiting ground where German intelligence could identify people who showed strong loyalty to Nazi Germany. Intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover in German consulates across America attended Bund meetings and carefully observed which members seemed most committed and capable. They looked for people with access to valuable information, those working in defense plants, shipyards, military bases, or government offices. They also sought individuals with technical skills who could understand the military secrets they were supposed to steal. The recruitment process was subtle and careful, often taking months or even years to complete. A potential agent might first be approached with innocent-seeming requests, perhaps to translate a document or provide information about their workplace that seemed harmless. Only gradually, after trust was established and the person had already committed small acts of assistance, would the true nature of the relationship be revealed. The infrastructure supporting German espionage in America was surprisingly sophisticated for its time. Secret radio transmitters were hidden in houses and apartments across the country, capable of sending coded messages directly to Germany. These transmissions had to be brief to avoid detection by American radio direction finding equipment, so agents used complex codes and ciphers to compress maximum information into minimum transmission time. Some messages were written in invisible ink and sent through regular mail to addresses in neutral countries, where German intelligence officers would retrieve and decode them. Money to fund espionage operations flowed into America through various channels, including German businesses operating in the United States, payments hidden in legitimate commercial transactions, and cash physically smuggled across borders. German intelligence also established safe houses where agents could meet, receive instructions, and pass along stolen information without being observed. These locations changed frequently to avoid detection, and agents used elaborate counter-surveillance techniques, checking for followers, using multiple forms of transportation, and employing dead drops where materials could be left and retrieved without the participants ever meeting face-to-face. Among all the German espionage operations in America, none was larger or more ambitious than the network that became known as the Duquesne spy ring, named after its leader, Frederick Joubert Duquesne. This South African-born adventurer and con artist had already lived a remarkable life before becoming Germany's master spy in America. Duquesne claimed to have fought against the British in the Boer War, and he harbored a deep hatred for Britain that made him eager to help Germany in any conflict against the British Empire. He was a natural spy, possessing charisma, intelligence, and a talent for deception that served him well in the shadowy world of espionage. By the late 1930s, Duquesne had built an extensive network of agents across America, with members working in critical defense industries, military installations, and commercial shipping. His ring included more than 30 active agents, each with specific assignments and capabilities. Some worked in aircraft factories and stole blueprints of new American warplanes. Others monitored ship movements from American ports, providing Germany with intelligence about convoy schedules and cargo contents. Still others gathered information about American military strength, new weapons development, and defense plans. The Duquesne ring operated with remarkable boldness, stealing secrets that gave Germany significant advantages in the early years of World War II. One agent working at an aviation company photographed detailed plans for the Norden bomb sight, a top-secret device that greatly improved bombing accuracy and represented one of America's most valuable military technologies. Another agent provided information about American aircraft production schedules, allowing Germany to estimate how quickly America could build an air force if it entered the war. Members of the ring also gathered intelligence about new types of ammunition, armor plating, and other military innovations. All this information flowed back to Germany through multiple channels, where military planners used it to develop countermeasures and adjust their own strategies. The success of the Duquesne Ring demonstrated both the vulnerability of American defenses before the country entered the war and the sophisticated capabilities of German intelligence. The agents met regularly at restaurants and bars in New York City, often communicating in code even during face-to-face conversations. They developed personal relationships and friendships, creating bonds of loyalty that made the network more resilient. Duquesne himself acted as the central coordinator, collecting information from his various agents, encoding it and transmitting it to Germany, or passing it to German intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover. Unknown to Duquesne and his network, the Federal Investigation Bureau had been steadily improving its counterintelligence capabilities throughout the late 1930s. J. Edgar Hoover, the legendary FBI director, recognized the growing threat of foreign espionage and made it a priority for his agency. The FBI began recruiting and training special agents in counterintelligence work, developing techniques for surveillance, wiretapping, and infiltration of suspected spy rings. They faced significant challenges, however, because American laws at the time provided limited tools for counterintelligence work, and many Americans remained deeply suspicious of government surveillance, remembering abuses from World War I when German Americans faced widespread persecution based on little more than their ancestry. The FBI had to walk a careful line, gathering evidence of genuine espionage while respecting civil liberties and avoiding the appearance of ethnic persecution. Hoover also had to work within a political environment where many Americans opposed any involvement in European conflicts, and some even sympathized with Nazi Germany, seeing it as a bulwark against communism. Despite these obstacles, the FBI quietly built its cases, following suspected agents, photographing their meetings, intercepting their communications, and slowly mapping out the entire network. The breakthrough in the Duquesne case came from an unlikely source, a German-American businessman named William Siebold, who had been recruited by German intelligence during a visit to Germany in 1939. The Germans trained Siebold in espionage techniques, gave him a special mission to establish a radio station in America and serve as a communication link for their spy networks, and sent him back to the United States with detailed instructions. But Siebold had no intention of becoming a German spy. Before returning to America, he contacted American officials at the consulate and revealed everything the Germans had told him. The FBI saw an incredible opportunity and quickly brought Siebold into an elaborate double-agent operation. They would let him establish the radio station and make contact with German agents in America exactly as the Germans wanted, but the FBI would control everything he did. Siebold would become the FBI's window into German espionage operations, revealing agents, methods, and objectives, while the Germans believed he was their loyal operative. This operation required extraordinary planning and risk. If the Germans suspected Siebold was working for the FBI, not only would the operation fail, but Siebold's life would be in grave danger from German agents who would see him as a traitor. The FBI set up an elaborate deception, establishing a radio station on Long Island that appeared to be Siebold's independent operation but was actually completely controlled by FBI technicians. Every message that arrived from Germany was decoded and analyzed by the FBI. Every response was carefully crafted to maintain Siebold's cover while feeding false information to the Germans and drawing out more details about their espionage operations. The FBI also created a fake office in Manhattan, where Siebold supposedly worked as a business consultant, but which was actually rigged with hidden cameras and microphones. German agents who came to meet Siebold found themselves walking into the most sophisticated surveillance operation the FBI had ever created. Cameras hidden behind mirrors and inside walls photographed every visitor. Microphones concealed throughout the office recorded every conversation. The FBI captured hundreds of hours of film and audio, documenting meetings between Siebold and members of the Duquesne ring as they discussed stolen secrets, espionage techniques, and their communications with Germany. For over a year, the FBI patiently gathered evidence, allowing the spy ring to continue operating while documenting every aspect of their activities. This required enormous discipline because the FBI knew these spies were stealing American military secrets, yet they had to let it continue to build an airtight legal case that would stand up in court. While the Duquesne ring focused on gathering intelligence, other German operations had far more sinister objectives involving sabotage and destruction on American soil. Operation Pastorius represented Nazi Germany's most ambitious sabotage plan against America, a scheme that, if successful, could have severely damaged American war production and killed countless civilians. The operation was named after Franz Daniel Pastorius, the founder of the first German settlement in America, a historical reference meant to inspire the agents involved. German military intelligence spent months planning the operation, selecting agents, providing training, and preparing equipment. They chose 8 men for the mission, all of whom had lived in America for extended periods and spoke fluent English with American accents. Some had been members of the German-American Bund before returning to Germany when war broke out. Others were German citizens who had worked in America and knew the country well. All received intensive training at a special sabotage school near Berlin, where they learned to use explosives, timers, detonators, and incendiary devices. They studied American factories, bridges, railroads, and power plants, identifying vulnerable points where sabotage would cause maximum disruption. The plan called for the saboteurs to enter America by submarine, landing secretly on isolated beaches under cover of darkness. They would bury their equipment, change into civilian clothes, and disappear into American society. Once established, they would begin a coordinated campaign of sabotage targeting aluminum plants, crucial for aircraft production, hydroelectric facilities that powered war industries, railroad bridges and tunnels that transported materials, and factories producing war materials. The saboteurs carried enough explosives and equipment to conduct operations for up to 2 years. They also brought large amounts of American currency to fund their activities and establish themselves in American communities. German intelligence believed that even if the sabotage campaign caused limited physical damage, the psychological impact would be enormous, creating fear and paranoia throughout America as people wondered where the next attack might come. The operation would demonstrate that America was vulnerable despite being separated from the European war by the Atlantic Ocean, potentially undermining public support for the war effort and forcing the government to divert resources from fighting overseas to protecting the homeland. In June 1942, the operation launched when 2 submarines departed Germany carrying the sabotage teams. One submarine headed for Long Island, New York, while the other sailed toward Florida. The submarines successfully crossed the Atlantic undetected and approached the American coast on schedule. On the night of June 13th, 4 saboteurs landed on a beach near Amagansett, Long Island, emerging from the surf, carrying waterproof cases filled with explosives and equipment. As they buried their supplies and prepared to change clothes, disaster struck when they encountered a Coast Guard patrol walking the beach. The Coast Guardsman, John Cullen, stumbled upon the men in the darkness and immediately knew something was wrong. The leader of the sabotage team, George Dash, made a split-second decision that would doom the entire operation. Rather than killing the Coast Guardsmen, which might have preserved their secrecy, Dash attempted to bribe him, offering money if he would forget what he had seen and walk away. Cullen, sensing extreme danger, pretended to accept the bribe and quickly left the beach. He immediately reported the encounter to his superiors, triggering a massive response. Within hours, investigators found the buried explosives and equipment, realizing they had uncovered a major sabotage plot. The second team of saboteurs landed successfully in Florida 4 days after the Long Island group, coming ashore near Jacksonville without being detected. They buried their equipment and made their way to Jacksonville, then split up and traveled to Chicago and other cities to begin establishing themselves, unaware that their operation had already been compromised. Meanwhile, George Dash was experiencing severe doubts about the mission. Whether motivated by conscience, fear, or calculation, he decided to betray the operation to American authorities. Dash traveled to Washington and attempted to contact the FBI, but initially had difficulty convincing FBI agents that he was really a German saboteur rather than a crank or lunatic. Eventually, he persuaded them to take him seriously and spent days providing detailed information about the operation, the other saboteurs, their training, their targets, and their plans. This information allowed the FBI to quickly locate and arrest all 8 saboteurs before they could conduct a single act of sabotage. The arrests happened so quickly and quietly that the public initially knew nothing about how close America had come to a devastating sabotage campaign. The capture of the saboteurs represented a massive intelligence and law enforcement success, but it also presented difficult questions about how to handle the prisoners. These were not ordinary criminals, but enemy agents caught attempting acts of war against the United States. President Franklin Roosevelt decided the saboteurs should face military justice rather than civilian courts. He ordered the creation of a special military commission to try them, a decision that raised constitutional questions about the rights of prisoners and the jurisdiction of military versus civilian courts. The trial took place in secret during July 1942, with the public kept largely in the dark about the proceedings. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of the sabotage plot, including the explosives and equipment found on the beaches, detailed testimony from Dash and another saboteur who cooperated with authorities, and documentation of the men's training and mission orders. The defense attorneys, appointed military officers who took their duty seriously despite the unpopularity of defending German saboteurs, argued that the men had committed no actual acts of sabotage and that some had intended to surrender to authorities all along. The military commission rejected these arguments, finding all 8 men guilty and sentencing 6 to death and 2 to long prison terms. The executions took place on August 8, 1942, in the electric chair at the District of Columbia Jail. The 6 condemned men died within an hour as the executions proceeded with grim efficiency. Dash and another saboteur who had cooperated with the investigation received prison sentences instead of death, though Dash would spend years regretting his decision to betray the operation, feeling he had been treated unfairly by the American government, which he believed had promised him better treatment in exchange for his cooperation. The swift justice demonstrated America's determination to punish enemy agents and served as a powerful deterrent to future sabotage attempts. The government eventually revealed the story to the public, using it as propaganda to show both German ruthlessness in attacking America and American effectiveness in protecting the homeland. The failed operation had important impacts on the war, convincing German intelligence that sabotage operations in America were too risky and causing them to abandon plans for similar attacks. It also led to increased security at vulnerable facilities across America and heightened public awareness of the sabotage threat. The legal precedent established by the military commission would be cited decades later in debates about how to try suspected terrorists and enemy combatants. The capture of the Duquesne ring and the saboteurs represented the FBI's greatest counterintelligence successes. But many other German spy operations were also active in America during the war years. The FBI pursued these networks with increasing sophistication and success, using lessons learned from earlier cases to improve their techniques. One important case involved a German agent named Kurt Friedrich Ludwig, who operated an extensive spy ring that gathered information about American ship movements, military installations, and defense production. Ludwig, who had lived in America since childhood but maintained loyalty to Germany, recruited a diverse network of agents, including disgruntled Americans, German nationals, and opportunists motivated by money. His network operated from 1938 until 1941, when the FBI arrested Ludwig and 14 of his associates. Another significant case centered on the Rumrich spy ring, which operated in the late 1930s and included members who attempted to steal American military documents and information about fortifications, aircraft, and naval vessels. The FBI broke this ring in 1938, arresting 18 people and revealing to the public for the first time the extent of German espionage activities in America. Each successful counterintelligence operation provided the FBI with more knowledge about German methods, codes, communication techniques, and agent training. The FBI began to recognize patterns in how German intelligence recruited and handled agents, how they communicated, and what types of information they prioritized. This growing expertise made it increasingly difficult for German agents to operate successfully in America. The FBI also benefited from increased cooperation with British intelligence services, who shared information about German espionage techniques learned from their own longer experience fighting German intelligence. The British provided valuable insights into German codes and ciphers, radio communication patterns, and agent tradecraft. American entry into the war in December 1941 after Pearl Harbor fundamentally changed the environment for counterintelligence operations. Suddenly, actions that had been legally questionable in peacetime became clearly justified as wartime security measures. The FBI gained new powers and resources, allowing them to expand surveillance, wiretapping, and infiltration of suspected spy networks. Public attitudes also shifted dramatically, with Americans now alert to the danger of enemy agents and willing to report suspicious activities to authorities. Behind the statistics and the spycraft lay real human stories of people whose lives were destroyed by involvement in espionage, whether as agents, victims, or innocent bystanders caught in the machinery of suspicion and counterintelligence. German agents who were caught faced execution or long prison terms, cut off from their families and homelands, dying or languishing in American prisons far from everything they knew. Some were true believers in Nazi ideology who accepted their fate as martyrs for their cause, but others were opportunists or reluctant participants who deeply regretted their choices. The families of captured spies suffered terribly, often facing public shame, harassment, and economic hardship. Children grew up knowing their parent was a convicted traitor, bearing that burden throughout their lives. Some families were torn apart when one member spied, while others remained loyal to America, creating bitter divisions that never healed. The German-American community as a whole suffered from suspicion and discrimination, even though the vast majority had nothing to do with espionage and were loyal Americans. Innocent people lost jobs, faced harassment, and endured questioning by FBI agents simply because of their ancestry or association with German organizations. The FBI agents and military intelligence officers who hunted spies also paid a price for their work, spending years in a shadowy world of deception and suspicion that took emotional and psychological tolls. They worked long hours under intense pressure, knowing that their failure could result in deaths of American soldiers or successful sabotage attacks. Some spent so much time in the world of spies and counterintelligence that they became suspicious of everyone, damaging their personal relationships and mental health. The nature of counterintelligence work meant that many of their greatest successes had to remain secret even after the war ended, denying them public recognition for their achievements. Double agents like William Siebold lived under enormous stress, constantly worried that a single mistake might expose them and lead to assassination by the very people who thought they were loyal German agents. Even after the war ended and their true roles could be revealed, some double agents struggled with questions about their identities and loyalties, having spent so long pretending to be someone else that they lost touch with who they really were. The espionage operations in America showcased the technology and techniques of intelligence work in the World War II era, a fascinating glimpse into a world that mixed old-fashioned human intelligence gathering with new technological innovations. Radio communication played a crucial role, allowing agents in America to send information directly to Germany without the delays and risks of physical courier systems. The radio transmitters used by German agents were relatively compact for their time, though still bulky by modern standards, often hidden in attics, basements, or specially modified luggage. Agents had to be trained radio operators, learning Morse code and the technical skills needed to maintain and operate the equipment. They transmitted late at night when atmospheric conditions improved signal quality and when fewer people were awake who might notice unusual activity. The FBI developed increasingly sophisticated radio direction finding equipment that could locate transmitters by triangulating their signals, leading to the capture of several spy rings when investigators tracked down their radio operations. Codes and ciphers represented another crucial technology, allowing agents to communicate without revealing their secrets, even if messages were intercepted. German intelligence used various encoding systems, from simple substitution ciphers to more complex schemes involving codebooks and multiple layers of encryption. Some messages were encoded twice, first using a cipher and then using a codebook that replaced common words and phrases with number groups. Breaking these codes required patient analytical work by cryptographers who looked for patterns and weaknesses in the encoding systems. The Americans had significant success breaking German codes, partly because agents sometimes made mistakes in encoding or used systems improperly, creating vulnerabilities that skilled codebreakers could exploit. Invisible ink provided another means of secret communication, with messages written between the lines of apparently innocent letters using chemicals that became visible only when treated with the proper developing agent. German intelligence trained agents in multiple invisible ink formulas, some using common household chemicals and others requiring special compounds smuggled to the agents. The successful American counterintelligence effort boosted public confidence and demonstrated government competence at a time when faith in institutions was crucial to the war effort. The FBI's victories against German spies became powerful propaganda, showing that America could protect itself and punish those who threatened it. J. Edgar Hoover skillfully publicized the FBI successes, building the Bureau's reputation and his own political power in ways that would shape American law enforcement for decades. The legal precedents established in spy cases, particularly the military commission that tried the saboteurs, would influence how America dealt with national security threats for generations. The expansive government powers claimed during wartime, including extensive surveillance and detention of suspected enemy agents, set patterns that civil libertarians warned could threaten freedom, even as security officials argued they were necessary to protect the nation. This tension between security and liberty, first sharply highlighted by the World War II espionage cases, remains a central debate in American society today. Looking back at German espionage operations in America, what stands out most clearly are not the successes but the failures and missed opportunities that characterized the effort. German intelligence agencies suffered from fundamental problems that undermined their effectiveness throughout the war. The rivalry between the Abwehr and the SD created duplication of effort, wasted resources, and sometimes led to the two agencies working at cross purposes. Neither agency shared information effectively with the other, and both sometimes prioritized bureaucratic advantage over operational success. The quality of agent recruitment was often poor, with German intelligence sending agents to America who were inadequately trained, poorly motivated, or psychologically unsuited for espionage work. Some agents, like Dash, turned against their missions almost immediately. Others proved incompetent, making basic mistakes in tradecraft that led to their quick capture. The Germans also failed to properly assess the capabilities of American counterintelligence, particularly underestimating the FBI's determination and growing expertise. They continued to use methods and techniques that the Americans had already learned to counter, showing a dangerous inflexibility in their approach. The strategic focus of German intelligence operations in America also revealed serious analytical failures. Too much effort went into gathering information about American industrial production and military capabilities that could have been obtained through open sources and legitimate intelligence analysis. German intelligence officers could have learned much of what their spies risked their lives to steal simply by reading American newspapers, industry publications, and government reports. The obsession with human intelligence led them to undervalue other intelligence sources and methods. Meanwhile, areas where espionage might have provided genuinely valuable intelligence received insufficient attention. The Germans failed to penetrate American code-breaking efforts, never learning that their own codes were being read. They gained little insight into American military planning and strategy at the highest levels. They failed to identify and exploit serious divisions within American society that might have been leveraged to undermine the war effort. In short, German intelligence in America was often busy but rarely effective, generating lots of activity and reports without providing information that significantly helped Germany's war effort. One of the most fascinating aspects of the intelligence war involved captured German agents who were turned and became double agents working for the Allies while the Germans believed they remained loyal. The British perfected this technique in what they called the double-cross system, and the Americans learned from British experience and applied similar methods. When FBI agents arrested German spies, they faced a choice between simply prosecuting them or attempting to turn them into sources of intelligence about German operations. Some captured agents proved willing to cooperate, whether from fear of execution, genuine remorse, or calculation that collaboration offered their best chance of survival. The FBI could then use these double agents to learn about German intelligence methods, identify other agents, and even feed false information back to Germany. The most successful double agent operations required enormous effort and careful management. FBI handlers had to maintain the agent's credibility with their German controllers while ensuring the agent did not provide any genuinely valuable information to the enemy. They had to craft plausible reports that seemed useful, but actually contained either harmless information or carefully designed deception. William Siebold's operation represented the most ambitious and successful double-agent case run by the FBI during the war, but several other captured German agents also agreed to cooperate with American authorities. These cases provided invaluable intelligence about German espionage priorities, communication methods, and agent training. They also allowed the FBI to waste German intelligence resources by keeping the Germans convinced their spy networks were functioning when in fact they were completely controlled by the enemy. The psychological warfare aspect of double-agent operations cannot be underestimated. German intelligence officers spent time, money, and effort managing agents who were actually working against them, creating a fundamental distortion in their understanding of what was happening in America. Information they believed was reliable intelligence was actually carefully crafted deception. Agents they thought were loyal were betraying them. This kind of systematic deception, when revealed after the war, severely damaged the credibility and morale of German intelligence services. The double-agent operations also demonstrated the sophisticated understanding of human psychology required for successful intelligence work, as handlers had to manage complex relationships with agents who were often unstable, unreliable, or playing their own games.